last time, and we had a better morning session last time, but we did talk about, I have a collection of vinyl records. We got about 2,500 vinyl records, and we talked about what do those old vinyl records and kids have in common. And some of the answers we got were they make a lot of noise. If you don't take care of them, they can skip, crackle, pop, that you've got to take care of. And if you do take care of them and treat them the right way, they can play music for a long, long time. So I just purchased a Ella Fitzgerald album, and it's late 1950s, maybe 1960s, but the record's about 60 years old now. Plays perfect. It's still in the original sleeve it came in. The cover looks great, and when you put it on that turntable, it still does its design purpose, music. And for our kids, if their purpose is to be respectful, to be honorable, to be joyful, all of the good qualities we want from them, then it's our part to care for them and take care of them just as we would that record. Then last time we asked this question: what is your primary role as a parent? Do any of y'all remember what that was?
Guys, care, shape and form their soul, take care of their soul.
Thanks, Katie, get a gold star. Shape and form a human soul. That a lot of, when you have these conversations with parents, those are always the first thing. I gotta feed, I've gotta get clothes, I gotta take care of their physical needs, I gotta, their physical needs, all those different things. But it goes way deeper than that in terms of who we are as parents, grandparents, even aunts and uncles. Our job is to shape and form a human soul. That's a pretty big task. It's a monumental task. Unfortunately, it's a task that as you walk the hallways of the schools in Tifton and across the nation, you find there are a lot of kids who don't have anybody in their lives who's taking the time to try to shape and form their soul. But we also make the mistake of parents who think that we are doing that job, that if we're not careful, we'll lose that battle as well. That it is a non-stop, everyday process. And then the third thing we talked about was seek first to understand before being anybody.
Understood.
Understood? You obviously came to the first lesson. So seek first to understand before being understood, and that comes from a guy named Stephen Covey, who wrote a book that my wife actually gave me to read after complaining about people not listening. Seek first to understand before being understood. And then the last thing we talked about was value-motivated parents. That for parents and grandparents, things we need to do is look at our values. What do we value? And it's more than just what do we think is important. How do we spend our time? What are we placing all of our energy into? So some simple things would be work. That a lot of parents aren't here at 9 a.m. in the morning because they went to work. If we were having something this morning at the high school for my kids, I wouldn't be there because I'm already committed to being here. So work is important. And we know that work is important, but then there are other things that take our time. Sports, vinyl records takes part of my day. Books, going out with friends. All those things are things that we may start to value that may start interfering with the values that we want to develop as a family and that what our kids see. So the question is what do your kids believe that you value? So one of my favorite songs is The Cat in the Cradle song by Harry Chapin. But the whole story really is about what his dad valued. His dad valued work, making money, doing those things, but not time with the kid. Because if the kid gets the baseball glove, He's like, hey, Dad, for his birthday, he's like, Dad, can we go out and play? You know, not now. I got to do this work thing. Dad, I want to be just like you. And then as the story unfolds, the kid is basically becomes his dad as well. And they want to, you know, the dad at that point realizes, I need to connect with my son. I'm like, look, Dad, the kids are sick with the flu. I got work. I don't have time. And what do we value? And how do these values impact your parenting? So a good question to ask, you know, would be to ask your kids, hey, what do you think we value as, what do you think your mom values, your dad values, your grandparents value? What does our family value? And see what their take on that is. We shared 2 weeks ago that for like Noah Smith, who is one of I have twin boys, and one of the twins has no interest in sports, doesn't like them at all. But if you ask him, hey, Noah, what does your dad value on the weekends? He would say, oh, my dad values football. He loves watching college football and pro football. But Noah hates it. He thinks it's a pointless endeavor. So there's a conflict between what I value and what Noah may value and what Noah may need in his life right now. And sometimes I let my values get in the way of being a good dad and nurturing that relationship. And then, you know, our goal is to just talk about what we're going to do in the class. And then we said that we would try to start on time and end on time. But I did strike out that we will not go over, because we did go over last time, we may, but you can leave whenever you get ready. All I am is a parent, and I've been in the school system since I was 5 years old. So I've got almost 50 years of school experience, and I've got a 22-year-old daughter and 15-year-old boys. But I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not any of those things. I'm just a guy who's trying to tell the story of what I think could help us in our homes. But I'm not a clinical expert by any stretch. And there are a lot of resources, and you can read a lot of different things. I'm hoping you can hear the video, but we're going to play it and see. But as we deal with our kids, especially as kids get into teens, we know that kids sometimes, we tell kids what to do, and kids have responses that we don't necessarily want to hear. And what we're trying to do in the classes is share with you ideas that you can do that are positive and bring about a nurturing relationship. But I'm going to show you a video of what we want to do as parents. And I use this at school a lot when I was in different roles there. It's about 6 minutes, so it's a little bit long, but I really like it. Hopefully you can hear it.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just watching my now.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me. Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no. Just have a seat. Let me tell you a bit about our building. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that.
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last for 4 or 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't pay checks.
All right.
Go.
Go.
Tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Okay, well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I just start thinking about being buried alive and begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to to bury you alive in a box?
No, no, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
You're there.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it?
Yes. S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is it. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
Yes.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop.
So, I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
But I only have a 5, so
No, I don't change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it. Not of some kind. Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fat.
No, we don't go there.
But I used to.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say.
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
Yes.
I wash my hands all the time. A lot of germs. Yeah, don't worry about that.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
Stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Kathy?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like it?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast, is that right?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
Right.
You ready? Right, here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Because as parents, that's what we want to tell our kids. Most of the time they come in and start telling us something. Either we ask them to do something and they start giving us a response back, but, that's not fair. Stop it. Do what I say. Unfortunately, in dealing with our kids, when they were toddlers, it was easy. But now that they're teens, dynamics have changed. So I want to, and the video will make sense as we go along. This was one of the questions we had from the last session that we did a couple weeks ago. It was such a good question that I kind of took out some things that I planned and thought, well, let's kind of talk through this, because this is kind of the heart of where we are with teenagers. And the question was this: how do I get my child to open up and express emotions? And in some ways, that's kind of like the thing that lawyers talk about. You know, never ask a question to a witness on the stand that you don't already know the answer to. And sometimes when we desire to have our kids open up and express emotions, you got to make sure you're aware as a parent that what you get may not be what you had hoped you would get. There may be a lot that comes out, but it is something that we've got to work on trying to get our kids to do. So what I said was many parents are content with limited conversation without any emotions, and that we like using as parents phrases such as this. And all the phrases you're going to see are phrases that you'll find in the Smith house from time to time. And our number one response at the Smith house is, suck it up. Dad, this happened, suck it up. Just get up, knock your blue jeans off, and suck it up. But a lot of times there's more to the story than just suck it up or can answer. Don't let them see you cry. Dad, this is going on at school. This girl said something, or Dad, this guy said something to me, hurt my feelings. Well, be strong. Don't let them see you cry. Be tougher than they are. Sticks and stones. There are very few parents in the world that have not said, sticks and stones. They break your bones, but words will never hurt you. That's the biggest lie ever known to man. Sticks and stones can hurt you a lot more than a fist or a punch can. At times we tell our kids, fight fire with fire. Don't let that kid push you around, you push back. Ignore them because you're better than that. Don't pay those kids any attention. Just ignore them. We're better people than those people. Turn the other cheek. No, that's in the Bible. Just turn the other cheek. So our kids hear that. Tell someone at school about school problems. That's why I pay taxes. Don't bring you know what we like to say at school? Don't bring home problems to school. We don't want to deal with home problems at school. And at home sometimes we tell our kids, I've got enough going on at home, don't bring school problems to the house. I'm paying people to take care of you up there. Let them do that job. Let them do their job. And our kids hear all these different phrases. It'll be better in the morning. Go to sleep. You'll feel better in the morning. And then so many phrases like this, they rarely get the desired effect from our teens that they're seeking. They need mom and dad to have a better plan than just a phrase. So what we want to talk to is just some ideas and thoughts on how we might can do this. We think as parents that we're doing enough as parents sometimes that our teenagers are protected. This is from the Jason Foundation. Jason was a young man who in 1997, I believe, committed suicide. And his parents started this foundation, and they provide a lot of stats and different things. But it says this: more teenagers than young adults die from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defect, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, chronic lung disease combined. Each day in our nation, there are an average of 3,069 attempts by young people in grades 9 to 12. These percentages are applied to grades 7 and 8. They'd be higher. You're talking about over 3,000 kids a day are attempting to do something to harm their life. The problem is those numbers aren't just talking about one group of kids. It's not just saying the kids who are poor, who don't have anything, who are frustrated with life. No, not just those kids. Part of those kids, part of it is middle class, upper class. So that number is going to take anybody who lives in Tifton despite their color, what their parents do, how much money they make, how big their house is, how small their house is. Doesn't matter. Teenagers are going to take things and they're going to start processing those differently. And if we can't capture the warning signs and have conversations with our kids and have relationships with our kids, then our kids could be a statistic as opposed to being a kid in our house for a long time. If you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, Georgia got beat this year by who? Does anybody know? Who?
Some Carolina team.
Some Carolina, South. You get half a star for that one, Katie. So South Carolina beat them. South Carolina's quarterback, last name is Halinsky. His brother was the starting quarterback at Washington State. So a great athletic family. But in the Georgia-South Carolina game, they kept talking about the brother in Washington State who had committed suicide. So the kid had it all. He was a tremendous athlete, good-looking kid, but yet things went wrong in his life, and that's our hope here is to be able to talk through some ideas that might help us do some things. I want to share one letter with you that we shared to the evening group 2 weeks ago, but I want you to think back for a minute what your experience was as a teenager, 13 to 18. So just tell me, what was it like for you? Picked on.
Because I wanted to be smart.
Yes, thank you. And Mari is the parent engagement coordinator at the high school. She's also my sister-in-law, so I call her Aunt Mari. Every time I say it. So as teenagers, picked on because we want to be different by being smart. What other things stand out from that time? So it was a perfect time. You'd go back to it if you could. Picked on, bullied. Some had great experiences. Some loved it. Some probably would go back. I told the evening group last time that somewhere around 13, 14, 15, I realized that this ear dropped down significantly lower than this ear. Just some kind of little birth defect thing. My sister has the same exact thing going on with her ear. But I was so worried that if a girl saw this ear, that would cancel me out as a prospect. So I wore my hair. Every picture of me as a teenager, my hair is always over my ears. Every single picture. And in class, I would sit like this. Because I really thought, if I hold it up long enough, it'll be like crossing your eyes when you cross your eyes and your parents said, hey, if you do it long enough, it'll stick. If I hold it up long enough, it will stick. It bothered me. It made me self-conscious. I mean, I worried about it. And then at some point, somebody mentioned, hey, your nose is kind of flat. It's not pointing like other people. It's a little flat. What's going on? What happened? And then I go to the mirror and I'm thinking, I've never noticed it before. Then it became a thing. So then it became, I'm sitting in class and I'm trying to do some cosmetic, I'm trying to get some surgery going on without having to get surgery. And then my brother, who's now one of the chorus teachers at Tift County High School, he's way older than I am. But at one point he told me, he said, man, your bottom lip, it's really big. So then my bottom lip became I thought, man, it is kind of bigger than everybody else's bottom lip. So then all those things, I just thought, these are going to have a tremendous impact on my ability to find somebody to spend the rest of my life with. I was 14, 15. It bothered me. We know bullying is always talked about in school. So we have those group of kids that talk about, I was bullied the way I looked because I wanted to be different. I wanted to be smart. I love the arts. I love this. I love that. And then we have kids who were the bullies. But so much is going on in those teen years. So it's easy for us to get frustrated with our kids, and it's easy for us not to understand why they're having the struggles that they're having. We're giving them food, we're giving them all those needs. I got you a house, I got you a place, I got you clothes, I got you shoes, I got you food. Come on now, what more do you need as a teenager? I had a person that I'm friends with that wrote this. I may have already given y'all one, so now you can give one to a friend. So I want to just read this out. And I want to read it because of what I want you to understand is this was a teenager who had a mom, who had a dad, had a place to stay. But this is exactly what this was high school, this was teenager for them. He says, the other night my family was watching the Goldbergs, one of our favorite shows. This episode ended with a school dance. I paused the show and said to our son, if you ever get a chance to dance, do it. Don't ever miss an opportunity to dance. He nodded and said he would. I could tell he was a bit confused. You'll have a chance one day to dance with someone you'll probably like, I said. I don't want you to regret not doing it. Ask the girl, dance. Ask the girl to dance. Do it. He promised he would. I hope he will. I've told people that I didn't go to either of my high school proms out of choice. I say that I chose partying with my friends. I paint a picture of a wild night on the coast. It's a lie. I wanted to go to proms badly. For my senior year, I didn't even try. I knew better. By that point, 12 years of school had taught me that my body was to be shamed and ignored. I was too big. I took up too much space. I was freakish. The proper response was to feel shamed, to hide my body, to do everyone the favor of staying out of the way. I regret all of it. I regret that I let myself feel that way. I wish that I could look my 17-year-old self in the eyes and say, the only person you have to make happy is you. The problem is that I can't even tell my 45-year-old self that. I don't believe it as much as I would like to. I still feel the shame of my body and still feel that the proper response is to stay out of the way, to hide. The body is radically public. We exist as bodies. As such, our bodies are like whiteboards in classrooms. People write on them with permanent markers over and over again, creating a cross-hatching of stories and ideas, all of which conflict and contradict, leaving no real story, no real answer. The best thing is to look away. I don't know if my boy will dance. I hope he will. He's like me, far too inward-looking, far too philosophical, and far too deep a thinker for this world. And it's that quality that will get in his way. I worry that he'll overthink it. I worry that he'll get lost in his own head and miss the beauty of the world all around him. A beauty that's sometimes so inspiring that the only response is to look into the heavens and dance. So as you read through that, can you see what the person is experiencing as a teenager? And how long has it impacted their life? Forever. The amazing part of the story for me was that when you first read it, you think, oh, this poor girl, she really had a hard time. But it wasn't a girl that wrote it, it was a guy who was a very successful person in his profession, two great wives, two great kids, but still struggles with the pain associated with being a teen. I'm convinced that as I've heard more and more of his story, that a lot of that pain goes back to a couple of big things. His relationship with his dad, his relationship with his mom, and being able to process where he was in life. And I think a lot of it gets traced back to communication. How he communicated with mom and dad, and how he felt valued and saw what their values were and understood those. And I think he struggled with that a lot in his life and has tried to work those things out and certainly be a better communicator and more open with his own kids. But you can tell by what he wrote. And he wrote that maybe 2-3 weeks ago. but it's still a prevalent part of who he is. I love the question about how do we get our kids to open. I think that might be a great session for a future workshop. Here are some recommendations I would mention to you. You've got to look at what you value. You got to ask your kids, what is it that our family values? And time is one of the biggest things you're going to be able to provide to your kid. And we can all sit and say, oh, I've got to give my kid time. I'm not talking about just 5 minutes around the supper table where we're all trying to get into food and say, hey, real quick, and checking our phones the whole time that we're doing it. I'm talking about committing time to our teens for the express purpose of building a relationship and talking, and maybe even talking about subject matters that we really just want to avoid. I have a 22-year-old daughter, 15-year-old boys, and there are a lot of times I'll tell my wife, can you just handle that? Can you talk to them about, I don't really want to talk to Abby about that stuff. That's girl stuff. But there have been times it's been, no, Alan, she's your daughter. And she needs to hear that from her dad. If it's bothering you and you want to ask her the questions, ask her the questions. You're her father. Same thing with the boys. Hey, they're just starting to get taller and bigger and all that, and maybe, Mom, you need to go ahead and have some talks with your boys. I've had some talks with the boys. You need to do your job too. If we think the school's doing it for us, they're not. Not the way it needs to be done. If we think the other parent is doing it, not the way you may be able to do it. If we think that the grandparents can do it by themselves, they can't. Each person has to take responsibility. We said before you got here that our role as parents comes down to really one phrase. Our job is to shape and form a human soul. It goes beyond what we can get or provide, or we are shaping and forming a soul to last them a lifetime. If you believe in some spiritual aspect, then you're talking about shaping and forming a human soul that could last for all eternity, is what our job is as parents. Schedule time together, ask questions, be purposeful, know what you want to talk about, but then ask what it is they want to talk about. Ask questions with the intentions of seeking to understand something as opposed to making yourself understood. It's easy for me to sit down with my kids and say, hey, I want to talk, but here's what, I'm going to talk about this, and I want you to understand what I'm saying. Start small. You don't have to be Dr. Phil to talk to your kid. But if you're not having conversations with your kid, somebody else is having them for you. If you're not having conversations, and if you're not talking about the difficult things, if you're not asking them about their feelings and their emotions on things, they're sharing, or somebody else is sharing stuff with them. If you want to know, you've got to engage in the conversations, and if you're going to engage in the conversations, you have to create time. Don't believe that because I've created this environment for my kid, they don't need, I've got them, they're covered. You've got to invest more. You got to invest yourself, and you got to invest time in conversations. Don't overthink it, just do it. When I was an assistant principal at Charles Spencer, Miss Rosemary Alexander hired me as her assistant. And Miss Rosemary basically said, I'm covering the office, you got this part, this is your job. So every day I was in every classroom. And what I found was the teachers appreciated what I was doing. But the truth is they desired Rosemary Alexander to come in their class to affirm that what they were doing was quality. They wanted her coming in and saying, thumbs up. They liked talking to me. They desired that conversation with the person who was in charge. Your kids may tell you different. You may think your kids think differently. I'm convinced that deep down, our kids desire their parents to have a vested interest in who they are as people. And they want to have conversations, not just be talked to, and not just told, and not, you better not do this, Alan Smith, or I'm going to do this. I believed it. I don't know that I understood it. And I don't know that I understood the moral implications of what he was trying to say, the spiritual implications of what was being said. I just knew one thing was wrong, and if I did it, there were going to be consequences. But I don't know that I truly understood the whole idea of what we were talking about. It can be simple. So for Alan Smith, and we said this in the first session multiple times, my 3 kids, above anything else, are 100% sinners. Every day of their lives, they sin. Despite all I've done for them, they sin. Despite all my mom and daddy did for me, I'm a sinner. But we have tried to do some things that we think can help them on their path. And as a dad, one of the things that I've done, dirt roads, popping ice cream. There is nothing that we've enjoyed more than running to Esco's on 28th and 10th, grabbing ice cream, grabbing a bottle of pop, and heading out to dirt roads. We love riding Wiley Branch dirt road. And the kids sometimes will hop in the back and it will just be their time, but then one of them will hop up front, and one of them may drive. And we have conversations, just the 2 of us. And some of those conversations on riding on dirt roads have been critical. The times for an old man to ask his daughter, how's this friend, and what do you think this friend is, what is that relationship really like? What are the parents really like? What do you see? And then the questions that come about have led us to some pretty deep conversations. And then share your story. Be careful, but share your story. Your kids want to hear about what you did as a teenager. They like hearing that stuff. But I would caution you on this. Your experience is not your kid's experience. Because what we sometimes do as parents is your kid's going to come in and say, you know, Mom, my boyfriend broke up with me, I'm devastated. And you're going to say, look, I dated 3 different boys in high school, and you're going to move on, you're going to find another one, put that out of your mind. But your experience is not their experience. I love sharing stories of being a teenager. But my trials and tribulations that I went through do not match the trials and tribulations that they go through. We had a family member who was 18 that passed away a year and a half ago, tragically. And with the family, so many people would come up and say, I know what you're going through. No, you don't. You don't have a clue what this person is going through. You can relate your own personal experience to what you went through, but it really doesn't match what I may be going through. And as parents, sometimes we know how we handled something and how we processed it, and we believe that's exactly how our kids should be able to do it. But it's not. Your experience doesn't match their experience. And the only way to find out what their experience is happening is to communicate. Telling stories of mischief, daredevil acts, etc. are fun to tell, and a lot of those need to be told. They're stories that just need to keep getting passed on. But always know what you want your kid to take away from the story. So I made some bad decisions as a young driver. Bad decisions. Fortunately, those decisions didn't cost me my life or anybody else's. But some of those stories I don't really share, because there's not really anything to take away from it other than for whatever reason, I didn't get harmed in the act. But I don't necessarily tell those stories because I don't need them thinking, well, my daddy said he drove 88 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone one time and da-da-da. And if he did 88, maybe I can do 89. And then I'll tell my kids that story. Know what you want that takeaway to be when you're sharing those stories. Telling stories of your own struggles, fears, and failures are worth telling. Again, your story does not equal theirs. I like telling my boys the story, things of what I feared, things that I was scared of, inadequacies that I may have felt as a teenager. I think they can relate to it. But my inadequacies or my fears doesn't match theirs. I can share mine, but I need to be willing to listen to see what theirs are as well. And then be a radical planner. Husbands often hear spontaneity is a great thing. Wives love to tell their husband, just surprise me. Do something you haven't done for the last 20 years. Do something different. And for husbands, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we're supposed to be spontaneous when we just want to know what the answer is. I think spontaneity is great in doing surprise things, but when you try to plan ideas and things with your kids, I'm convinced, plan it. Plan it. Don't throw it on them at the last second. Be a planner. But plan what it is you want to do. Whether it's ball games, bowling, we're going to stay at home and play video games. We do some game at our house where we take our phones. We're putting answers on that pop up on the television screen. And there are moments in time that the 5 members of the Smith family are laughing and crying at what we're putting on the screen to these questions. I'd probably rather be watching a ball game sometimes, or and Abby may rather be with her boyfriend, or the twins may rather be doing that. But once we start it and get engaged in it, it's priceless. But we plan it. We know what we're doing because your teenager they've got a calendar full of stuff. And when you spring on them, hey, Friday night, you go home from this and you say, hey, tomorrow night we're going to do family night together. And your teen's going to say, wait now, I've had this planned for a week. So-and-so's got a party and no, we're going to do a family thing together. I don't know that I advocate that being the best plan. Be a planner. Be a good planner. Then the last question we had from the previous session was, in days of social media, how do we connect the parents of our child's friends? On Facebook, we put up an article about Jack and Iris Gibbs, so you can go to our Facebook page and read that. And then we just simply talked about the ideas of, if you want to know who your kids' friends are and who their parents are, invite them to your place. You got to give up your time to get to know them. So our house, we have a very small 1,500 square foot home. For the longest time, 5 people lived in it. We didn't have a lot of space. Jack Gibbs, when he was principal in Tifton, told me, we made our house the house to come to. We wanted kids to come, to love coming to our house. So we bought snacks, we bought drinks. If we thought it would bring the kids to our place, we bought it. We invested. And everybody brought their kids to our house to hang out. We got to know their parents, and we got to know those kids. And on Friday and Saturday nights, when others' parents' kids may have been going out and doing this, our kids got a little frustrated going, God, we want to do something other than stay at the Gibbs house the whole time. But everybody else just wanted to stay here. But it gave us an opportunity to get to know those people. So plan things. I would encourage you to do this. Share your expectations with other parents. When our daughter and Abby was 13 or 14, my wife had a conversation with a parent about the fact that at that point, she didn't watch PG-13 movies unless we had watched them. We had to know what was in it. And Suzanne had a brief conversation on the phone. But Abby goes to an event, and she walks in the door, and one of the kids says, hey, we were going to watch this R-rated movie, and now we can't because of your mom. So everything didn't go the way we wanted to. And Abby called and said, hey, I don't know if this is going to work out, but it had been better if we'd have had a sit down, if we'd have known more, if we'd had a better conversation with the parents about what our expectations were as parents and getting to know what their expectations were as well. And then for the last 10 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about behavior. Most of what we do in parenting classes, I said this last time, my job is not to push a religion on you, but most of the work that I use, that I read, are all religious materials. Pastors, churches put out great information on parenting. And I read a guy named Paul Tripp a lot, and he says this: the goal of parenting is not control of behavior, but rather heart and life change. So your purpose is to form and shape the human soul. And then with behavior, the job's not to control it, but to change the heart that goes with it. So looks can be deceiving. Our teens have changed. At 5, we told them what to do to keep them alive. But now we share clothes with them, we swap shoes, we use the same makeup, shaving cream. All of a sudden I got ready for a funeral the other morning. I looked at my wife and I said, "Where's the shaving cream and my razor?" She's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, honey, if you're not using it, who else is?" He said, "Well, you got 2 15-year-old boys upstairs." So I go upstairs and there's my stuff, and I'm thinking, well, I don't even know who's using it. But we're using now the same stuff. I couldn't find my black shoes this morning, so I'm wearing Nick's shoes right now. They're either or soon will be independent drivers. Many have jobs. Many have a bank account. In so many ways, they seem just like us, but they are not. So parenting is critical during that time. When our kids were toddlers, we can always answer questions just by saying, "I'm king, I'm queen, you're going to do it because I told you to do it." Teens need more than that, and when they don't get it, fill in the blank. Our teenagers need more than just a why, because I'm the parent and this is the rule. They need more than that in terms of answers and conversations. So here's some parenting methodologies that some of us use that Paul Tripp would say, be careful with these. One is this: I didn't turn out so bad. Just because we survived the parenting methodology of our parents doesn't mean it's a solution for our own parenting. Many of us will say, the way my parents did it, everybody needs to be doing it that way because I turned out just fine. Be careful with that stuff. And be careful with thinking just because it happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it matches what's going on today. It's a different world than it was when you were a kid. We said last time, when we went home from school, everybody in here, when we went home from school at 3:30 in the afternoon, we were safe until the next day. We were safe. Because the telephone, not a lot was going on the telephone. Our telephone, we had one phone, it was in the hallway. So if you were on the phone, Mom and Daddy knew exactly who you were talking to and for how long. Today, at 3:30, we got thousands, millions of kids watching that phone, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, to see if somebody is going to destroy their world before the sun comes up. Because they can do it. One message can change their outlook that quickly. So, all that to say, your life is different than theirs. Be careful with that. Pop psychology, bribery and contracts. What is your chief purpose as a parent? Shape and form a soul. A lot of parents live off this idea of they're going to bribe their kids to do what? They're going to give them a contract. If you do this, 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 I'll give you this. You see it at Walmart, right? When you go to Walmart, I think maybe I'm into almost a year now. The last time I went to a big Walmart, I hope I can make it the rest of my life. But when you go into Walmart, inevitably, every time I go, there is some lady with a stroller who's got a 2 or 3 year old kid in that stroller, and that kid is screaming, "I want it." and mom is yelling, "You're not getting it." And the kid is yelling, "I want it." And mom is yelling, "No." And at some point the mom says, "If you will stop screaming, I will get you this when we leave." And the kid has won that battle. Bribes, contracts. Or we use behavior modification. Reward when they do right, punish when they do wrong. Should our kids be rewarded for doing what is expected? So occasionally, we'll tell the kids, "Hey, Nick, you've got to cut the front yard. No, you've got the backyard. Trash, this. And one of them will say, "Are we going to get like an allowance for doing this?" "No, you're going to get to eat and live in the house for doing this." This is how we live. You don't get something extra for doing what's expected. I read a story about a parent that did the name in a jar kind of thing. So basically, every time you did something good, they wrote it down and they put your name in the jar. And there were like 4 or 5 kids in the house. So, hey, Katie took out the trash. Katie gets her name in the jar. And you would come up and you would say, "Hey, I need you to clean out the refrigerator. Can I get my name in the jar 2 times for doing that? Because that's a big job." "Yes. In fact, I'll give you 3. Just don't tell your siblings." "And the bathroom windows need to be clean, and that's your job. And trash needs to be taken out. Okay, you get 1 name in the jar for that. You didn't hit your sister when she took your money. I'm going to give you 2 times for that. That's a good one." Everything was about, every activity I did that was good, I got my name in the jar. And if I did a bad one, I might get pulled out. And so the question was did it work? And the answer was, the kids did a lot of really good things at the house. What the parents learned was they raised a house full of very selfish brats who only did things for themselves, never for anybody else. They never did it because it was the right thing to do. So I would caution you, be mindful of those things. Think about what it is you want. Emotionalism. In essence, parents use emotions to try to manipulate their child's behavior. Fear, feeling, shame, isolation, kind of like grounding. You're going to go to your room for the next 5 weeks because you did something wrong. And then you ask yourself, what's the purpose of that? Punitive, the threat of punishment to control the child's behavior. Yelling, hitting, grounding fall into this. Are the measures corrective or punitive? I've always been a believer in spanking. We've done that at our house. We've always done it. We did it with all 3. A few have gotten it more than others. However, it couldn't just be punitive. There had to be a corrective part of that. The spanking wasn't going to change the heart. It was maybe going to help express how bad of a choice somebody made. What was going to change the heart was how we handled that as parents with conversations and communication. Erratic eclecticism, we're just going to decide what we're going to do day by day, minute by minute. So Katie does something wrong today, you're grounded for the next 2 weeks. And then her sister does the same thing 2 weeks later, and I'm just going to give you 3 licks for that because grounding was hard work for the parents, so I'm not going to do that anymore. So sister gets 3 licks. And then the kids really never know exactly what is going on. And we all use those at different times. I'm just telling you, those may not be the best methodologies to use, and be careful when you use those. I'm not a big believer in contracts. I'm not a big believer in briberies and all those things because they don't address the heart. And if you're not addressing the heart in your parenting, then I think our kids are apt to go down the wrong path. But as parents, if we're not addressing the heart, I promise you somebody else is. And it may not be in a positive manner or the way you desire. So, what does it look like? We have rules, we have correction, we have discipline. And then what Paul Tripp says is, that's just part of it. Needs to be rules, corrections, discipline, encouragement, correction, rebuke, entreaty, instruction, warning, teaching, and prayer. So encouragement. Your child will fail, be rejected, and find things hopeless at times. As parents, we have to be encouragers, but we have to know when to be encouragers. Rose Wilhite was an assistant principal for me, and then she left Annabelle and became principal at Geo Bailey for a number of years, and is now a parent resource person at Annabelle. As an assistant principal, Rose was tough. She didn't play, and kids named Miss Wilhite does not play. But amazingly, kids would go in her office, and all of a sudden, Johnny would be in there, and I think, oh, Johnny, you're going to get 3 licks, buddy. You messed up today. And I'd walk back by, and Johnny is sitting on Rose's knee. Man, I thought he was getting, what in the world? And another kid may come in, and all of a sudden Rose has those glasses on the tip of her nose, and she's having a heart-to-heart conversation. She knew what kids needed by having conversations first. So there were times he didn't need this. This happened last night at home, and this is what he needs. His behavior was a result of this, and this is how I'm going to treat it. Correction. Your teen's going to test the water, and we want them to be brought into conformity with a standard. A rebuke censures behavior. It's wrong to do this particular behavior. I never want to see this action repeated. As parents, we hear so much today, and basically sometimes I think what we hear is the world telling us, you don't need to be condescending to your kid, you don't need to get in your kid's face, you need to be your mom or dad or grandma or granddad, whoever, whatever your role is. You need to be that person. And sometimes that means, as the kids may say, you need to get in their grill about a particular behavior. So there are behaviors where I've told the boys, that better not ever happen in this house again, ever. They needed to hear that emotion coming from me. If I do that every day, it's pointless. That's why teachers in the school system, I can tell you right now, I can walk any school in Tipton and tell you how good that person is going to be as a teacher by what I'm hearing. Because of what I'm hearing is, stop, I told you. I'm going to count to 3. If you hear I'm going to count to 3, they're in big trouble. They're in big trouble. That raising the voice and all that, there are times that needs to happen. It doesn't need to happen often, but then it's always followed by instruction, encouragement, and teaching. At Annabelle Clark, as principal there, we gave a lot of spankings. We never spanked a kid, not one single time, where that didn't end. We didn't hug, we didn't sit down, and we didn't talk about what we were going to do. With the boys, we may have gave 5 girls. Girls were great at Annabelle Clark, just the boys. But with the boys, it was always, hey, we're going to wipe our face off. Nobody's going to know but us. And then we talked about what we wanted to do. It was amazing that a 3rd grade boy, they needed that hug to go back to class. They desired it. And many times, they may not have cried during the spanking. They would cry during that process. Because we reached the heart instead of just something different. Communication, entreaty communication that is earnest and intent. There are times that you plead and beg your kids to do something because they need to know how important that is. Drugs, pregnancy, those things. I think that's what my dad was trying to do. He was trying to plead with me. Understand the consequences of this particular behavior. Instruction. A big question for today is what is your family framework? What do you use to guide the framework for your family in terms of your kids knowing what the expectations are? So is it the 10 Commandments? Is it the book of Proverbs? Is it something outside of the religious realm? If it is, then I'd be curious. What is the guiding principles of your family, and do your kids know what those are? Because if they don't know what they are, they're going to come up with their own, or they're going to find somebody else's to be pretty good. So how does your teen know what friends to trust? How do they know what to look for in a boyfriend or girlfriend? How do they know? I have conversations with my boys, but I had great conversations with Abby as a teenage girl about, I'm not happy that you're going to date boys at all. I'm going to try to be nice to them when they come to the house, but I'm not happy about it. But I know it's going to happen. But Abby, what do you want from a boyfriend? And then let me tell you what I think you need to know. And we had conversations about boys becoming husbands, the qualities and characteristics that they needed to exhibit. And we asked questions. Abby, what is this person's relationship with their mom? What's their relationship with their grandmother? What's their relationship with their sister, with other girls at school? And when she struggled to answer those questions, then I knew I could plant a seed in her mind that would make her think about, is this really the path I need to go down with this particular fellow? Do I need to invest my time dating somebody that may not be the standard that we've talked about as a family? Providing warnings to our kids. Paul Tripp says it's a merciful speech, for it's the equivalent of posting a sign warning motorists about a bridge that is out. So we warn our kids. We tell them about the dangers ahead. Teaching, the process of imparting knowledge, causing someone to know something. Sometimes it occurs before it is needed, oftentimes after it's needed. When the last hurricane came through and there were a lot of trees down, because I have two 15-year-old boys, I had several families call and say, hey, can y'all come help? Okay. And we showed up to help, and then this one guy had chainsaw. And my son Nick was like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, dude, you don't even know how to hammer a nail. You don't know how to operate the chainsaw. It will end your life. So we taught very carefully. And the tasks we gave were very simple. Now, probably do it. But a lot of times we teach after. So our response when our kid gets a speeding ticket is to go bananas because they got a speeding ticket and it's going to cost us $250. How could you do this? You know that our financial status as a family. Maybe I'm working 2 jobs and now you got a speeding ticket. Come on. She may need to hear the impact of what her actions have done. But what she also needs to be is she needs to hear a teaching lesson. She needs to hear a lesson about why it's important not to do what she was doing. And then prayer. Our responsibility as a parent are to shape and form a human soul. Prayer provides instruction and insight for the child. So no matter what your religious preference is, so if you don't like the word prayer, then I would certainly use the word meditate. You have to constantly think about where your kids are, where you want them to go, and how you're going to be there in that process. And again, if you're not doing it, if you're not having the conversations and being purposeful in creating time to talk to your kids, from the small things to the big things, somebody else will do it for you. The greatest wisdom my dad ever gave me was this. The day I got married, again, he was a very simple person in terms of, we didn't have great complex conversations, but the day I got married, my dad came in the room, my 2 guys that were with me on that day, He said, y'all step out for a minute. And my dad looked and he said, I'm going to tell you one thing. He said, if you don't treat her the way she needs to be treated, somebody else will. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. That one I understood. That if I didn't do what I was supposed to do as a husband, he was convinced somebody else will step up and do it for you. If you don't do what you need to do as a parent or grandparent, aunt, uncle, whatever a role may be, somebody else will step up and do it for you. I see it in the hallways every day at Northeast. I'm convinced parents love kids. They love their kids. Some of them they're not parenting their kids. But as those of us who are trying to parent, we fall into the trap of believing that I'm doing enough. And I'm convinced that there's more we could do to ensure and protect our kids. Your goal as a parent, shape and form a human soul. That is a big, big task. Your child's behavior, where a lot of us immediately go to, it's not to control it. It's to change the heart. You get to the heart, you get to the kid. Again, I got 3 centers on my hand. Drive me nuts from time to time. And I'll be the first to say, I've made terrible parenting decisions in the past. In fact, I shared one with Katie's group 2 weeks ago, and I made one that particular week. And all it does is encourage me that I missed this one. I got to do better next time. So yesterday morning, we get ready, this last week, we're dismissed. We are getting ready to leave the house 7:20 in the morning, same schedule. I get in the car. Noah hops in the car. Nick opens up the door and what I think gets in the car. And I'm putting on Spotify on my phone so I can hear the songs I want to listen to. So I take a minute and I do that. And I put the car in reverse. And we back out of the drive. And I go down the road because we pick up 2 other kids in our neighborhood. And I stop, and the little girl's coming to get in the car, and Noah looks back and he said, Dad, where's Nick? Is he not back there? He said, not back here. I said, where's Nick? And the little girl gets in the car, and she starts clapping. She's like, what's wrong? I guess we left Nick at the house. I said, I thought he was in the car. Well, we're a minute away. But by the time I back out, my wife calls. What's going on? We forgot, we thought he was in the car. But we race, but we go right back down the road. But when Nick gets in, now Nick's taller than I am, and he's a good sized kid. And when Nick gets in, and he's an emotional kid, he gets in and he slams the door. I was right there. I saw you backing out. I wasn't late. I said, Nick, I forgot. I thought you were there. I said, I was on my phone. I was distracted. You saw him. I know you saw him. And Noah's laughing. So his brother is being a discourager instead of an encourager. Noah's laughing at him. Ray, the little girl Ray's laughing at him. But I could tell this kid he was angry. And he thought it was a rule thing that I was trying to prove a point that he was late, therefore I left him. But his behavior was starting to cross a line that neither one of us wanted to go to. And we got to the stop sign. I said, Nick, I made a bad decision as a driver because I played with my cell phone and I got my music turned on, and then I didn't check my surroundings before I backed out. I didn't look. If the kid had been behind me, it could have been a tragedy. I didn't do what I told you to do as a driver. That was my fault. I should have looked. I thought you were in the car. Well, and he started. I said, now one more thing. I'm never not your father. And there's a tone in which you talk to me, and there's a tone in which I talk to you. Don't get those confused. Understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. By the time we got to school, we were good. Now, 2 weeks ago, I told Katie and them a story, and not so good, just completely blew it. So I learned something from 2 weeks ago to do something a little different. We don't know if I don't know that I'm qualified to even give a workshop on parenting. I know I'm a parent, and I know I work hard at it, and I know sometimes I have great success, and other times it's a colossal disaster. But I know each day we start fresh. We go to bed, and we try to have everything reconciled before we put our heads to the pillow. Talk to your kids. Create opportunities to have conversations. Put cell phones up for just a little bit. Your kids live by them. They need them. But they don't have to have them all the time. And they don't need to see you with them all the time. So I encourage you to talk to your kids. Invite kids to come over to your house. Make your house that place. And at the high school or Northeast, if we can do anything to help you, then let us know.